There comes a point in nearly every man's life when he wakes up feeling like something's missing, a heaviness he can't shake. It's not just loneliness, it's deeper than that. It's a sense that he's lost himself, trying to win someone who never saw his worth. From a young age, many men are taught that love is sacrifice, that romance means placing her above everything else, that if you're good, if you're attentive, if you show her how much you care, she'll stay. So, you follow the blueprint. You text her good morning. You wait hours for a reply, then pretend it doesn't sting. You cancel plans with your friends to be available. You listen to her problems, offer solutions, and tell yourself that this is love. You plan dates, buy gifts, memorize her favorite things, and rearrange your life so she knows she's important. You think that's what a man is supposed to do. But what do you get in return? Silence. Ghosting, mixed signals. Hot and cold behavior that leaves you confused and constantly second-guessing yourself. You lie awake at night wondering where it all went wrong. You scroll through your messages, analyzing every word you sent, looking for the moment you messed up. You start to question your worth. And then, despite everything you've done, she disappears. Or worse, she stays just enough to keep you hooked while offering nothing in return. That pain is real. It's sharp, raw, and consuming. And the worst part is that the world around you tells you this pain means you're weak, that your heartbreak is embarrassing, that you're supposed to man up and hide it. But how can you hide something that shattered your identity? You weren't just hurt, you were betrayed by the very idea of love you were taught to believe in. Society told you to give more, feel more, share more. But when you did, you were met with less respect, less affection, less interest. The truth is hard, but it's necessary. Neediness kills attraction. The more she senses you revolve around her, the less she feels pulled toward you. That doesn't make her cruel, it makes her human. When a man places his value entirely in her hands, she stops seeing him as a leader and starts seeing him as a follower, not consciously, not always intentionally, but instinctively. She senses you've put her on a pedestal, and that pedestal becomes a cage for both of you. This cycle doesn't just break your heart, it breaks your spirit. You begin to feel invisible. You lose your sense of self. You move through life reacting, not leading, hoping for crumbs of validation from someone who no longer sees your power. That is the pain of being forgotten, even while you're trying your hardest to be remembered. But here's the light in that darkness. Pain is not weakness. Pain is information. It's a signal that something in your life needs to change. And the fact that you're feeling this pain proves one thing: you care deeply. That's not a flaw. That's your gift. That pain shows you have the capacity to love with intensity, to commit with passion, to invest with your whole heart. That capacity, when directed properly, becomes unstoppable power. The first step is to stop giving that power away. Stop begging for love that should be returned freely. Stop shrinking yourself to be more digestible. Let this pain guide you, not into bitterness, but into awakening. Let it become the fire that pushes you to evolve, not just for her, but for yourself. You were never meant to live at the mercy of someone else's affection. You were meant to stand tall, centered in your own value, unmoved by attention, unbroken by rejection. Let the pain remind you of what matters: your mission, your standards, your voice. Because when you begin to rise from this pain, you don't just become attractive, you become powerful. There's a moment in every man's journey when the ground beneath him begins to shift, not because the world has changed, but because he finally sees it with clarity. That moment is when you stop defining yourself by how much she texts you back, how often she compliments you, or whether she wants to see you this weekend. That moment is when you understand that true power doesn't come from being chosen. It comes from choosing yourself. And for many men, this realization is like waking up from a lifelong dream. You suddenly notice how often you've bent over backwards for approval, how you've twisted your personality into someone more likable, softer, more palatable, hoping she would see you as enough. But here's the truth you've been avoiding. The more you seek approval, the less you receive it. Choosing yourself doesn't mean turning your back on women. It doesn't mean shutting off your emotions or becoming a loner. It means learning to breathe without needing her to validate every breath. It means realizing that your value doesn't fluctuate based on someone else's attention. The second you stop orbiting around her, and begin building a center within yourself, everything changes. Your energy shifts. Your presence becomes fuller. There's something magnetic about a man who walks into a room already whole, who doesn't need anything from anyone, yet still offers his presence generously. That's where Stoic power begins. Not in loud displays or tough guy bravado, but in calm certainty, in emotional independence, in knowing that even if everyone left tomorrow, your foundation would still be strong. A Stoic man doesn't suppress his feelings, he simply owns them. He doesn't seek control over others, he commands control over himself. And that level of internal discipline translates into external strength. It becomes attractive, not because it's trying to be, but because it doesn't need to be. That's the paradox. When you stop chasing, you start attracting. This shift is more than mindset. It's a lifestyle. It's built through small, consistent choices that reflect self-respect. You wake up and train your body, not to impress her, but to discipline yourself. You read books that sharpen your mind, not because it's trendy, but because your intellect matters. You protect your time, cut off draining relationships, and pursue goals that align with your vision. Not because it guarantees success, but because it affirms your worth. You stop performing for approval and start showing up for purpose. And when you do this consistently, people start noticing. She notices. But more importantly, you notice. You feel different, stronger, clearer, more in control. You walk differently. You speak with more conviction. You stop over-explaining. You stop justifying your choices. You stop apologizing for having boundaries. That transformation isn't about becoming someone else. It's about returning to the version of yourself that was buried under years of insecurity and conditioning. The shift isn't about being cold. It's about being composed. It's not about rejecting love. It's about redefining it. Because once you make that internal decision to prioritize your mission, your vision, your peace, and your standards, you realize something powerful. You were never meant to chase anyone. You were meant to become someone worth following. Detachment is not the absence of emotion. It's the mastery of it. It doesn't mean you stop caring or that you harden your heart to love and connection. It means you stop attaching your sense of worth to how someone else treats you. Detachment is strength in its purest form. It's the quiet decision to no longer let your emotional state rise and fall based on whether or not she replies to your messages, gives you attention, or chooses you. So many men today confuse love with dependence. They think being available 24/7 is romantic, that checking in constantly shows commitment, that waiting around proves devotion. But it doesn't. It proves one thing. You've handed her the steering wheel of your identity. The truth is, when you place your value in her hands, she loses respect for you, even if she doesn't consciously understand why. Deep down, she senses that you're emotionally outsourcing your happiness, that every move you make is calculated around her response, that your mood, your energy, even your focus hinges on whether or not she's in a good mood. That's not love. That's emotional slavery. And she doesn't want to be your emotional caretaker. She wants to be inspired by your stability. She wants to feel your energy, not be responsible for it. Detachment is the process of taking your energy back. It begins when you stop texting first out of habit, when you silence your phone at night instead of waiting for her message, when you stop rereading old conversations, searching for what you could have said differently. It continues when you stop watching her Instagram stories, hoping to feel connected. When you stop interpreting every delay in her reply as a crisis. When you realize that her silence is not an emergency, it's just space. Space that you can use to grow instead of panic. And make no mistake, detachment takes discipline. At first it feels uncomfortable. You'll be tempted to reach out, to check in, to chase that tiny hit of dopamine her attention brings. But each time you resist, you grow stronger. You reclaim another piece of yourself that you gave away. With each silent moment you endure without reacting, you build resilience. You start noticing things again. Your goals, your thoughts, your vision for the future. You begin to feel powerful in your stillness, not powerless in your silence. Eventually, that emotional clarity becomes your edge. You stop reacting, and you start responding. You stop panicking when she pulls away, and you start observing. You understand that her distance isn't rejection, it's feedback. And feedback is a gift. It tells you whether or not your presence is being respected. And if it's not, you don't beg for attention. You withdraw it, not to manipulate, but to protect your dignity. Because the man who practices detachment isn't playing games. He's just no longer willing to gamble with his peace. He's decided that being chosen is a bonus, not a requirement. He no longer fights for a seat at a table that doesn't value his presence. Instead, he builds his own table, and she can either step forward and meet him there or stay on the sidelines. Either way, his life moves forward. With clarity comes choice, and with choice comes power. That's detachment, not disconnection, but the ability to stay rooted in yourself, no matter who comes or goes. When you finally take back the energy you've been giving away, through constant texts, emotional overthinking, and putting her on a pedestal, what you're left with is power. And that power doesn't just sit there. It needs to be directed, focused, and refined. That's where evolution begins. Because the truth is, most men don't lack strength. They lack structure. They don't lack value. They lack rituals that reinforce it. You can have all the potential in the world, but without daily habits that shape who you are, you'll always drift. When you stop pouring your time and focus into a woman who doesn't reciprocate, you have a rare opportunity to channel that energy into your own evolution. This is where your rituals become sacred. The first ritual is how you wake up. Not when, but how. You don't roll over and check your phone for her messages. You get up with purpose. Whether it's 5 a.m. or 7 a.m., you rise with intention. You begin your day not in reaction to others, but in command of yourself. The second ritual is movement. You train your body, not because you're trying to impress her, but because your physical discipline reinforces your mental clarity. Every rep, every sprint, every drop of sweat is a statement. I am building myself. Your body becomes a reflection of your commitment, not to aesthetics, but to resilience. Then comes the mental ritual. You read, not to escape, but to expand. Philosophy, psychology, strategy. You feed your mind with frameworks that sharpen your thinking. You begin to see patterns in people's behavior. You begin to understand yourself. And that understanding creates power. Because once you know who you are and how the world works, you stop being manipulated by it. Next, you write. Not pages and pages of feelings, but clear thoughts. What are your non-negotiables? What are you building? Who do you refuse to be anymore? This kind of journaling is not therapy. It's blueprinting. It's designing the man you're becoming. You also learn to suffer voluntarily. That means cold showers, long walks in silence, lifting heavy weights, and sitting with discomfort. You do it not because it's trendy or fun, but because discomfort breeds discipline. When you practice suffering on your terms, life's challenges don't shake you. You're no longer afraid of rejection, silence, or solitude. You've already walked through those fires, and you came out sharper. And finally, you protect your environment. You cut distractions. You limit time with people who drain you. You don't indulge in gossip or mindless scrolling. You become intentional about who and what you give energy to. Because when your energy is focused, it becomes magnetic. People start to feel your presence. You walk into a room, and something about you is different. Not louder, stronger, not arrogant, rooted. You don't beg for attention. It naturally flows to you. These rituals aren't about appearing high value. They're about becoming high value. Every action reinforces your identity. Every day you add another brick to the foundation of your masculinity. And over time, you don't just look powerful. You are powerful. Not because you dominate others, but because you lead yourself. That's what evolution looks like. Not in grand gestures, but in daily decisions. And once you start, you never want to go back. Rebuilding your power isn't about becoming dominant or controlling other people. It's about reclaiming the direction of your life. It's about waking up every day with clarity and a reason to move, to act, to grow. When you rebuild your power, you stop being a man who reacts to what happens to him, and you become a man who makes things happen. You stop existing for someone else's attention and start existing for your mission. That mission could be your health, your career, your business, your craft, or the impact you want to leave behind. It doesn't matter what the mission is, as long as it belongs to you and demands your excellence every single day. Most men are distracted. They're lost in noise, scrolling, watching, consuming. They spend hours online watching other men win, other men build, other men lead, while they remain stuck in place. But When you're rebuilding your power, you unplug from that world. You stop watching and you start doing. You stop reacting to her silence, her cold texts, her emotional distance, and instead, you ask yourself, what am I building today? That shift is the beginning of real transformation. Because when you replace emotional desperation with daily discipline, everything around you starts to change. Power grows from structure. It grows from repeated effort towards something meaningful. If you wake up and build every single day, your body, your mind, your business, your influence, you become undeniable. You don't have to talk about it. She sees it. People feel it. You walk differently. You speak with a weight that can't be faked. You no longer seek validation because your actions already validate you. You're no longer asking to be picked. You are the one picking. And that shift, from passive to active, from reactive to driven, is what women notice on a deep, subconscious level. It's not what you say, it's what your energy broadcasts. That you are busy building a life so complete, anyone who wants access to it has to come correct. And when you build your world like this, when you rebuild your power from the inside out, you naturally develop a level of calm authority. You stop arguing to prove a point. You stop chasing to feel valued. You don't fear being left behind because you've become the one setting the direction. Your time becomes sacred. Your focus sharpens. You start saying no more than you say yes, not out of ego, but out of alignment. You start recognizing when something doesn't match your vision, and instead of tolerating it, you walk away. That's not arrogance, that's leadership. Rebuilding power also means surrounding yourself with people who push you to grow. You stop seeking shallow validation and start seeking accountability. You start craving challenge, not comfort. Because comfort never made a man powerful, pressure did. And when you voluntarily put yourself under pressure every day, whether it's physical training, mastering your craft, or chasing your goals, you evolve. You no longer need motivation. You have momentum. You no longer seek a woman to fill your void. You become the man who fills his own cup and overflows into others. Ultimately, rebuilding your power is about living on purpose. It's about becoming a man who stands for something, a man who leads with vision, who moves with direction, and who refuses to be defined by anyone else's approval. Because the most attractive thing you can ever do isn't chase a woman, it's build a life that makes her want to be part of it. When you're in that place, you don't need a crowd. You don't need to go viral. You don't need applause. You're not performing. You're becoming. And that kind of power doesn't ask for attention. It demands it. True dominance is not about controlling people or raising your voice to be heard. It's not about intimidation or fear. Dominance, in its most powerful and magnetic form, is calm, silent, and deeply rooted in inner certainty. It's about being emotionally unmoved in moments when most would crumble. It's about holding your ground, not to prove you're right, but because you no longer need to prove anything at all. And yet, for that power to be irresistible, not just feared, but respected and desired, it must be paired with heart. Dominance without empathy becomes tyranny. Dominance without warmth becomes cold and mechanical. But when a man holds his power with compassion and self-awareness, he becomes a force that few can resist. In relationships, there are moments when your woman will test you, not always intentionally, but instinctively. She might pull away, question your decisions, challenge your views, or act emotionally chaotic. This is not because she wants to break you. It's because, at a subconscious level, she wants to feel the edges of your strength. She wants to know that you are not easily shaken, that you are a rock she can lean on, not a storm she has to manage. If every time she gets upset, you apologize without reason, explain yourself unnecessarily, or try to fix her emotions to win her favor, you teach her that you will bend and break at the first sign of tension. And in doing that, you lose her respect. Not because she's unkind, but because the masculine energy she craves isn't rooted in emotional instability. It's rooted in stillness. You don't need to respond to every emotional outburst. You don't need to explain yourself in 10 paragraphs every time she questions your choices. A silent boundary, delivered with a calm presence, is more effective than a dozen defensive arguments. When you say no and mean it, when you walk away from drama instead of entertaining it, you signal strength, not indifference, but direction. And that direction is what makes her feel safe. Women don't want men who are emotionally robotic. They want men who can hold space without collapsing under pressure. A man who feels deeply, but doesn't let his emotions control him. A man who listens with presence, but moves with principle. Being emotionally unwavering doesn't mean you shut down. It means you show up fully, but stay grounded in your values. You're able to comfort her when she's vulnerable, but you don't lose yourself when she's emotional. You don't chase validation. You don't panic when she's distant. You don't mirror her chaos with your own. Instead, you hold your frame. You remain calm. That creates intrigue. She looks at you and sees a man who knows himself, one who is not shaken by moods, not manipulated by guilt, and not swayed by fear of losing her. This calm intent is what makes a man unforgettable. In a world full of emotionally reactive men, you stand out, not by yelling, not by playing games, but by standing tall in your truth. Your presence speaks for you. Your eyes communicate certainty. Your tone remains level, even when emotions run high. And in that stillness, she leans in. Not because you forced her, but because she feels magnetically pulled. She senses something rare, a man who can hold both strength and softness. A man who doesn't just lead, but leads with heart. And that is what true dominance looks like. It's not about overpowering others. It's about becoming so grounded in who you are, so in tune with your own emotional world, that others naturally follow your lead. Not out of fear, but out of trust. You don't demand loyalty, you inspire it. You don't seek approval, you radiate certainty. You are the calm in her storm, the leader in chaos, and the presence that reminds her of safety. That kind of dominance doesn't fade. It leaves an imprint, not just on her, but on every room you walk into. That is the power of dominance with heart. This isn't about manipulative tactics, it's about transformation. When you become so deeply rooted in your mission, your identity, your purpose, even her silence echoes respect. Silence doesn't mean disinterest. It means she's absorbing the shift in you. She's waiting to see if you'll break, but you don't. You stand. That level of confidence draws her organically. It changes everything. If you've stayed with me all the way here, type unstoppable in the comments. That word is your commitment to change. Don't just watch this transformation. Be the transformation. Subscribe now and tap the bell. Hit like, share with a brother who needs this, and let us know. Which part of your identity are you reclaiming today? By supporting this channel, you're not just changing your life. You're helping these insights reach women searching for their own power. Every subscriber spreads strength. This is just the beginning. You are becoming unstoppable.